Porters Creek is hugely important because when the floods are on, it fills up. It's like a lake. If you drive along Huey Road, you'll see the lake. And it is, we call it Porters Lake. And it does become a lake. And so it's incredibly crucial to retain all that water to stop gouging of the river down further, into Wyong Creek. The Wyong River. So it plays a big holding basin. So it plays a practical role to stop flooding further down. But its biodiversity is tremendous. It's been kept intact all those years, despite some landholders on the edge using it for cattle and all that type of thing. But it's always been revered as a tremendous area of biodiversity. All sorts of things in such a huge area. Right, well, Warnervale, the small town of Warnervale was an insignificant little place. It really had the railway station and only maybe 100 homes or something a few years ago. But now the development that's going along in that upper area, which fringes, is a mammoth housing estates going in there. And so the runoff into the creek is critical. Those that are already built are draining toward that wetland, and so it becomes even more critical as a holding basin. So I don't think it can take much more. It's on the edges, and I would, we'd be fighting all sorts of developments around the edge of that, and we do, looking at where the water flows from these hard stand areas and little roadways. So it's getting to a point where development, including the airport has always been a worry because they've wanted to get into that area and trimming trees for heights to allow aircraft to land through the middle, and it's there hasn't been much respect in recent times from some previous councils, not our elected council, which was dismissed as a very good council under Jane Smith and others. They did set up that Biodiversity Conservation Trust agreement to be signed, and we were all in shock when the administrator came along and said, "No, we aren't signing it because we have to have an airport plan first." Well, no, it's not. It's the environment and Porters Creek is critical to a lot of things. So that's right. It was up on what's known as Tuggerah Road up there now, which is off the Pacific Highway as you go north of Wyong. The development in those slightly drier areas on the eastern side of Porters Creek in the upper area, the biochemical plant was there, and they were dumping in the early days, chemical drums really off the edge of their plant into the wetlands. So there was a lot of hoo-ha about that then, and there's a group that formed to fight off any expansion of the chemical plant and to have it cleaned up. So it took a while, but we had good councils then to come in behind us. Councils such as those led by Bob Graham in the earlier days. When we had good elected councils, and they did become responsible, they did react to concerns of the community about chemical dumping. The boundaries of Porters Creek to be solidified, as was in the Biodiversity Conservation Trust agreement, which was to be signed. We need those things to be solidified. We can't have this fluid situation where yet another airport plan without any. I mean, these airport plans have no. There's no business plan attached to them or anything else. They don't seem to have any boundaries. They come up with bits and pieces every few years. We can't go on and have Porters Creek just put aside until all this furphy around the airport, of which there's nothing much happening there right now, I can tell you. There's not a lot happening so far as the amount of money that's been put into it. So, but Porters Creek needs to be solidified, and we need to work on that.
First of all, Porters Creek Wetland, the area that's outlined in yellow, with the cursor there, outlined in yellow, is all council-owned land. It includes the Warnervale Airport as part of the land holding. And as you can see, it's quite extensive. Going on to the next area, you can see the zoning of the land. That right there area is actually zoned as you can see, C2, but there are some lands in there which is the airport, which is zoned industrial. But the majority of the wetland itself, as you can see, is zoned C2, which is the highest conservation value. But then 2 is the blue shading area represents, so it's a combination of, it's total area of council ownership that's actually zoned C2 is 900 hectares. So Porters Creek is actually it's the largest freshwater wetland on the Central Coast. And it's also one of the largest areas of 900 hectares of council's land in continuing ownership. It's also important to understand that Porters Creek Wetland goes across onto the western side of the M1 motorway. Looking at that area there, you can see that's its proximity to other nature reserves. And that is, you've got Gillaby State Conservation Area there, but also too, according to a state government publication, Porters Creek Wetland is located in the main wildlife corridor linking Arimba State Forest across to the Munmorah National Park, and is also a critical link going up to the north into Lake Macquarie. So as you can see, it's actually on the crossroads of east-west, north-south biodiversity corridors. That's really important, the fact that this wetland is in that unique situation of being a crossroads, both north-south and east and west, which identifies areas of high conservation value. And when it's red, it's got the highest number of concentration. And so you can see there's some the red areas is where you've got a combination of all sorts of things. But the entire area that's owned by council, that's zone C2, as you can see, is all red, except for where that's the airport is there, and that's the industrial zone there. But you can see it's the entire area is classified as being of high conservation value. Underneath the state environmental planning policy, which was called coastal management, which has now been changed, you can see in the 600 hectares is that outline there, that is actually a state significant wetland. So you can see the state significant wetland goes right across and includes an area, and that's the railway line. So it actually includes an area on the eastern side of the railway line. There's all these mapped areas. That's an endangered ecological community. That's an endangered ecological community. That's an endangered ecological community. And that's a different endangered ecological community. So you can see something like over 90% of the area that council owns consists of endangered ecological communities. There's Porters Creek Wetland, which is what my cursor is going on now. In this area here, you can see that area through there is currently being developed for, as you can see, urban development. All this area up here has been earmarked. All that area through there has been earmarked. That's the Dawson land there, and all that area through there. In addition, this area over here, you can see, is land that's actually zoned for industrial purposes. So the amount of development that's currently occurring within the catchment is actually phenomenal. It places the wetland under greater pressure. The fact that, see all that area there, that means all that's becoming a hard area. All this area is becoming a hard area. All that area through there is currently got development applications to have it developed for industrial purposes. All this development is in the upper catchment. And this is Warnervale, all that area through there is in the Warnervale Township. So in other words, the entire upper catchment of Porters Creek Wetland is going to become a hard surface area. To put it in a simple way, currently the water quality coming into Porters Creek Wetland prior to this current development, which is occurring here and here, you can see the development was actually scattered rural residential development. And with scattered rural residential development, you had a couple of houses, but the majority of the land surface would have actually, it was either pasture or vegetation, So that meant nutrients were retained on the land. If you then transfer these areas and all these areas, which are now all that, to this, it all becomes a hard surface area, which means nutrients are no longer absorbed in the land surface, but they all get channeled towards the wetland. Under the Local Government Act of 1993, the government introduced an amendment which said that if you've got land that's actually owned by a council, it has to be classified in two ways, either operational or community. Operational land means a council can do on the land what it chooses. It can rent it, it can lease it, it can sell it. Whereas community land is for the purpose of the community that was purchased for community land. If it's got natural assets, it's for the purpose of promoting the natural assets. If it's got a tennis court on it, it's for the purpose of running a tennis court, but the land can never be sold. The airport has what's called existing use rights. In 2014, the former Wyong Shire Council then extended the wetland from this location out to here. And when it extended it, it did not follow the appropriate approval processes under the Environmental Plan and Assessment Act. And it was fined by the Department of Planning of clearing vegetation without development consent. But because it was actually extending the runway under what's called a Part 5 approval under the Environmental Plan and Assessment Act, the Act is drafted in a way that it never considered that a local authority would breach the Act. And prior to the council undertaking works in 2014, this area had all regenerated into native wetland vegetation. And that's the reason why they plotted the boundary along the existing native vegetation. And they did not take into consideration the existing use boundaries of that area in there. When the master plan, a draft master plan was placed on exhibition, and it said the airport would not extend. However, it only has approval to here, and it's extended to here. So that area there has no approval under the Environmental Plan Assessment Act. It has no approval to clear this vegetation here. It has approval existing use rights to clear vegetation there, but it doesn't have approval to clear the vegetation out to here or down to those marks there. The draft master plan does not contain factual information to make an informed decision for the community, in my opinion, because it hasn't examined the history of what happened here. It's just made generalized statements and has used multiple aerial photographs, which actually paint a completely different picture of the value. For example, this area here, which is all vegetated, if you look at the draft master plan, that's all cleared. Oh, there it is. Look at that. That's an artist's impression. So figure 45 of the master plan stage 2 talks about, as you can see, they're pretending that area is cleared.
Or they intend to clear it.
It's implying that this area is actually is cleared at some future point of time, but that's all C2. This area, there's the Porters Creek Wetland proper. There's if I go back and show you the endangered oak communities, that area there is all zone C2. And the reason why it's zone C2 is because of its high conservation value. The council is saying that the airport in stage 2 is going to be this area here, but they're then without telling us, and they're saying that that area there, which is actually all C2, becomes part of the airport by default. This area all becomes cleared to allow commercial operations such as a passenger terminal. And so this area here is like for private use. This area here, although it was never stated in the draft airport master plan, I believe is actually being, someone's got the idea of actually making this a regional airport with commercial passengers, or it's a regional airport for goods and services. Environmentally, bear in mind, you don't for the Category 1 aircraft, you don't need this length. You only need it to stop here. And that's that's the end of the runway on both sides. So that length there services the Category 1 aircraft. And so it means, excuse me, the flight path to clear vegetation down here starts from that angle. So, I mean, if I imagine a flight path, you've got to clear vegetation to ensure that you come down. So if your flight path is here, you're clearing vegetation that height. If you extend the runway from that location to that location, it means this vegetation here, which is currently not being required to be cleared, has to be trimmed. And so it ends up looking like this rather than this. And that extends, not like in that angle, but it would extend possibly down to here somewhere.
So what are you describing?
Sorry, we're up against a culture in the current Central Coast Council that places no value on, sorry, when I say culture, I'm not talking about an individual officer, but I'm talking about the culture of the organisation. The culture of the beast actually originates from the Wyong Shire Council. The Wyong Shire Council in 2014 had a culture of ignoring statutory legal requirements to do a Part 5 assessment. So it just built the airport and it suffered a fine. So what? We got what we wanted. We didn't follow the law. Current operators on the site, council made a resolution to restore this area. And so there's on the books to restore all the area of C2. Council then tried to rescind that motion. The culture then tried to rescind that motion, not the councillors when it was in administration. So the council culture tried to rescind it, but they actually rescinded the wrong motion. And so they rescinded a confidential motion. And so there's still a resolution on council books to maintain this area. However, then council, as you can see, it's all cleared that area. When that was brought to the council's attention, they then said it was cleared because of federal legislation requiring a safe airport. But the airport's over here, not down here. So again, the culture ignores, they've got an approved airport there, the safety clearance is here, but they're clearing all that area there.
Why? Why are they clearing that area?
Because it has a culture that they don't care what the law says. The culture says we had an intention. In other words, when these went on exhibition, if the airport, the legal airport is there, all that area across here and across there should be vegetated like this. But because they don't want the community to know that, they've kept this area clear. And so therefore, when you look at aerial photographs, they're not extending the airport, but they're ignoring the fact that they're only got approval for Category 1 aircraft, not Category 2. The alternative vision is 1 week before the councillors were sacked, they were in the process of signing a biodiversity stewardship agreement. The agreement had been backwards and forwards from council and to the relevant department. They had come to a final agreement, and it was recognised that the then Chief Executive Officer would be signing that document within a week before they were sacked. That would have then meant the airport would have stopped at that location, because the biodiversity stewardship agreement was based upon this area across here being zone C2. So the flight paths of clearing were all based upon this airport as it currently stands. This is at 900 hectares of multiple endangered equine communities. The fact that, just looking at the simple numbers, if that could, in round terms, if 100 hectares could generate 2 million, 900 hectares could generate 18 million. And from that 18, that's 18 million at 2017, 2020 values. So that 18 million is most probably more like 20 million. And that 20 million goes into a bucket or a trust. And then from that 20 million, you can then withdraw to manage the wetland and manage the nutrient levels or the sediment that's coming in from the surrounding catchment.